series, and I'm delighted to introduce the next session, which is Keynote interview on embracing AI in the business. I'd like to take the pleasure to invite our esteemed moderator, Mr. Vivek Kalagara, founder and CEO of Datafoundry. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause. Welcome to Mr. Sunil Vuppala, Director, Data Science, Ericsson. Mr. Sunil Vuppala, I'm sorry. Welcome, sir. With his wealth of experience, Mr. Vivek will guide us through a compelling conversation that promises to shed light to the transformative power of AI in the business landscape, and Mr. Sunil will help us explore the profound impact of AI on the same. On that note, I would like to hand over to our moderator, Mr. Vivek, to take it forward from here.
Off with a trend. Ram Ram, everyone. It'll be great to have an interactive session here and think of your questions right away. The previous session was on Gen AI. Gen AI is the buzzword. But before we go into that, I'll ask Sunil to present a few. I think he has a few slides he wants to talk us through. AI in the enterprise is his theme. So let's go through it.
Very good morning to you all. It's nice to be here in the city, a vibrant city, Vizag. Even though I'm coming from Andhra Pradesh, I'm not a frequent visitor here. So last year I was here for an event in Geetam and back to be glad to be here again. So from morning we have seen a lot of interesting speeches, and then what I'm going to cover here in this part of interview, maybe I will take 8 to 10 minutes to give my perspectives on the topic embracing AI in the business, right? So what we are going to bring here, so before they bring it, I can start with my thoughts. So working in 20 years in the industry, both from product and service side, what my lessons are, we are not coming from the product or service organization from AI perspective, right? So even Vizag hosts a lot of companies, both product and service, and good ecosystem from startup. So the AI journey or a data science point of it from an industry perspective, so we have contributions both from product and services. We are going to talk, you can go to the next slides. So what we are going to share here from the thought perspective is we are going towards platforms and solutions. Okay, it's not just only the product companies like Google and Microsoft who are part of the journey, or Infosys, Tech Mahindra, or IBMs of the world, right? All of us are coming together and we are building platforms and solutions. Right? Startups also doing a great job there. Next. Another perspective I want to bring it here is compared to the regular software or IT kind of a projects, what is important here is both business and data. Some of them start with a business problem. Like we have from our chief guest, a lot of business problems you have introduced to us, and you have good data as well, terabytes of data, right? So both is a deadly combination. Even if I have an interesting problem, if I can't provide you the relevant data, right? We may be sitting on pile of data, terabytes, petabytes, right? But the moment we start the business problem, that's not the data I want, or maybe still we're missing gap, finally not solving the problem. The other way is, because we are in this hype of AI or Gen AI, everybody wants to catch up, right? They have a lot of data, but they don't know what kind of business problem they are trying to solve. So in my article during the COVID also, what I was talking there in that blog, both of them are important, right? In a software project, it's not like mandatory to start with the data, right? If I have an interesting app or a website or an application to start, I can start right away, right, with a proper design. So next point, when we talk about the data, right, there are different types of data. So because we have people from startup and students as well, what we mean by that data. Next slide, please. So when I ask that kind of a question, people talk about structured data or unstructured, continuous, discrete. There is no single definition. My way of looking at that is there are 7 types of data. Whether you solve it from your research background or as a student or from a business, right? I worked in healthcare earlier in Philips, now I'm working in a telecom. So the point is, maybe depends, okay, if you take the example of medical, maybe we are talking about a lot of image and video data. Or if you are talking about finance data point of it, we are talking most numerical, categorical. But I have given some examples. My aim here is, we are not trying to get it into the technology specific to each of this data. right? One side, this is the real data we are getting from the real world. Other side, we are talking about different technologies in the AI, machine learning. If you go to the next slide, machine learning, deep learning. It is our job to convert this data so that it is meaningful for the particular AI or ML to give it to us, right? We call it as pre-processing, data processing, right? There also we will use AI again. From this particular slide, what I mean by that is AI is not new to you, but the problem is in the media, people use it interchangeably, ML, DL, AI. So now in the last 10 years, what we have seen the major maybe developments are in the machine learning, right? But AI is a much bigger umbrella, okay? And within that there is a machine learning, within that there is deep learning. If you see the right side picture, so we are talking about it from the morning as well. Right now we are in the stage 1, or maybe stage 1 is already proven. Now we are stepping towards the stage 2, where machine intelligence or machine reasoning we call it from our office side. The point is we are going towards the artificial narrow intelligence to the general intelligence, right? You might have seen Elon Musk talking about putting the chip inside the brain, right? So that is going towards the general intelligence. It has both pros and cons, we'll talk separately. But the next one is a super intelligence, which will, maybe we will be under the control of AI, right? That may be much far ahead, but we are all contributing towards the artificial general intelligence as of now. Okay. And that discussion will not complete with Gen AI because we already covered in the last session. I will not focus too much into that. Can we go to the next slide? So my aim is to show you, not to go through the each and everything here. This itself will take an hour. The point is, whatever is your interesting area, whether it is agriculture or space, or as our chief guest mentioned, legal aspect. Even I have done some master in business law, so I understand some aspects of the law as well. So the point here is, being the technocrats, we need to add the value to the business, but we can't ignore this legal thing as well. We are talking about a lot. Unless it is in the right direction, we need to put a guardrails and maybe stop the development, right? So those are the debates going on, especially from Gen AI and AI aspects. So the key takeaway from here, whatever the field of your interest, right, for good for the society, you can pick any of them. It's not like, maybe the development point of it, if you go to the next slide, the adoption is not the same across the industry, right? Some places where, especially my points here, some may be regulated versus non-regulated, the risk level may be different, like that the adoption is not exactly the same, right? My previous keynote speaker talked about financial thing. I'm coming from telecom background, I worked in healthcare. So healthcare we put into low AI adoption, not because of the lack of use cases, but because of the risk level point of it, right? If I take a wrong decision, it may cost a life, right? Versus maybe in Amazon I'm giving a recommended product, maybe not exactly the correct, that's okay, right? It's a matter of business versus life. But with my experience in the healthcare as well, in my previous organization, to file a patent, I have 15 patents in the healthcare point of it. But we thought, okay, it may take 10 years to get an FDA approval or maybe our regulatory approval. But COVID transformed that, right? So, and we have now almost like 500 plus FDA approvals from AI based one. So if we can approve those in healthcare, why can't other applications, right? So from a risk level perspective. So we have a lot of ground to cover from a business applications point of it. Go to the next slide, please. So what we are solving, we talked about your AI journey, and then we talked about where it is applicable across the industries. Then what are the challenges and adoption point of it, right? So here I'm giving you some applications, some of them are from McKinsey, where we are using NLP, natural language processing, or Gen AI, deep learning to solve some of these automation activities, right? If you put that together, if you go to the next slide, I try to simplify into two things. One, the all hype on the generative AI, and the second one is a discriminative one. When I started out of my 20 years, maybe last 12 years into this journey, so I didn't expect personally this will be disruptive to this level, right? Because technologies keep coming, we talk about the hype cycle. I was working in my PhD on the Internet of Things. That time also the people talked about, maybe I'm talking 2010 level, MIT given a prediction, within 10 years, the Internet of Things will be pervasive in our life, right? But we already passed almost like another 14 years. Now it came a situation where, because we are talking about embracing AI for business, maybe in the 2015 time and all, yes, the Internet of Things is giving a lot of data. Then where is the business value for that? Unless we are able to show the dollar value, we won't be able to, the people, CXO level people will say, yes, good application and all that, but then they are not ready for investments. Now AI is coming as a savior because we need the data, and we have different types of data and bringing it together. That's where the first two blue boxes, where we are using it, whether it's a clustering, classification, I don't want to delve into the too deep technology there, but The point is we have a lot of applications which may be taken for a decision or some actions as well. Whereas the next one is from a generative perspective. One is discriminative thing, other one is we have done a lot of development there, and Gen AI is much faster than we expected. Then we will see both pros and cons, and we'll discuss some of them as well. And the last point in terms of that, go to the next slide please. So I brought together, okay, the purpose for this discussion is to enable you or to tell you from the business perspective, it is all good that technology is available, but what are the challenges which you and me need to work from industry or academia point of view to solve those? One is relevant data availability. Then bias in the data. That means data is available. We talked about relevant data needs to be there, but there is an inherent bias, right? In the recommendations, what we are doing, in the decisions we are making, sure. But who is responsible? If we are building the model, we are responsible for that, right? So whether knowingly or unknowingly. So how do you tackle that? Similarly, there are a lot of rules in terms of GDPR, data privacy rules, what belongs to what. Suppose if you go to the medical hospital and do a test, and who owns the data? Is it hospital or you? We are owning the data, but we are giving the consent for them to do the research, right? Similarly, EU, somebody spoken in the morning session as well, EU is coming up with an act and White House is coming. In fact, there is a last 2 months ago, we have a New Delhi declaration where we are talking about, now the framing details are going on from AI perspective, which is trying to bring together multiple nations to make sure we are following the guardrails, still getting the benefit of AI. Then we talk, and the need of the hour is to make sure we are building those scalable models, and then can we deploy something on the edge, right? In the webcam, in the CCTV examples, what our chief guest was talking about. Do we need to bring everything to the cloud, or can I do some intelligence there itself? Right now, everywhere you will see the smart TV, we call it as AI powered. Our mobiles, they call it as AI powered, and AI powered webcams, they call it as, right? Then towards the last, unless we show the business value and do a lot of trade-offs, we can't make it successful, right? The last slide. Before we talk further points, my points from the next point, what next is, we are going to, yes, AI is not new, Gen AI is coming, these technologies keep coming, but we are building towards the generative, artificial general intelligence, right, which is on the way. For doing that, unless we build some trusted AI or responsible AI, these are the terms which we are using it, there are a lot of research opportunities for you there, both from industry and even academia point of it, and even the startups, right? So we need to do that increased adoption, and we need to give that trust to the people who are using it, right? Then only it can progress further. And we are coming out of the POC development. Maybe the first my 12 years of experience in the AI point of it, first few years nobody asked for the dollar value. First let us show it is going to work. But later on we are talking about, unless you show, right, it is a value which is going to bring, then it will not fly, right? Then even I might have worked at 100 plus use cases so far in my career in the AI. I won't say all of them went to production, but in the last 5 years, maybe more than 50 to 60% we are pushing to the production. That's what we are measured at, right? So towards the end, Gen AI, in one of the recent conference where the stalwarts were there, we are talking about a lot of these things and billions of dollars were there, but the key takeaway which I want to leave you with and think through, to make the business value, it's not like how big the model is. Okay, just like Google, we may search the ChatGPT, but from an enterprise point of view, I may not require those billions of parameters or hundreds of billions of parameters. Unless we have a maybe 70 billion parameters, we may not call it as LLM. But slowly, the people may build the foundation models relevant for their department, right, or their vertical. That's going to work out is what we are speculating. And regulation should not stop the innovation, but it should guard right. With those key points, let's continue the discussion with Vivek, which I'm looking forward, and I will be able to answer some of your questions as well. Thank you.
One question from me, one question from you. What do you say? All right, let's start off with, I think, your departing thoughts on Gen AI. Right? How is Gen AI applicable in the enterprise, and how can enterprises take advantage of it? And number 3 is, because there are a lot of students and startups here, how can the startups think about Gen AI and taking them as use cases to the enterprises?
Good question. So even though what we call it as is, even though the technology point of it, if I ask you Gen AI how many years old, you will say one last year or maybe before that. But I worked with the Gen AI, the foundation of it, we call it as a generative adversarial networks or attention mechanism, what our earlier speakers are talking about, maybe 6-7 years ago. But we need a killer application to reach to the mass, right? That's where the open AI or ChatGPT has done for us, right? So that's where maybe from a B2C applications nowadays, whatever the customer service point of it, if you're opening a chat, whether the interface is WhatsApp or their website, 99% it's not a human on the other end. Everybody agrees, right? So those applications are there everywhere, right, from a Gen AI perspective. And by the way, Gen AI means our attention tends towards the generative text, right? But I have worked on the other applications in terms of even before the text, right? That Open AI or ChatGPT is mostly on the text. But we have a lot of things in terms of image, right, or the video. Now what we are going to progress is a multimodal system, right? But a lot of development happened in the text. That's what we are able to use. Maybe change our pattern. Instead of going to the Google, maybe we are going to ChatGPT. Or our kids are going, instead of searching in Google, they are asking their assignments or questions in the ChatGPT, right? At least initially they used to give the links and we do our analysis. Now we are also uploading that. That is giving tough time for the parents or maybe the professors to test their ability of learning, right? That's a separate topic. But from an enterprise point of it, one is those kind of interactive B2C or ChatGPT applications. Second thing is in terms of creating that, I told you one of the challenges is relevant data creation, right? So we used to have a lot of statistical methods earlier, but now with the Gen AI, whether it is image or video and all, because we are talking about not to have any bias in that. Or take the example of COVID. I might be building some models which is useful for the society, but I may not get all the patterns from the available data. If I don't generate those data points, I may be inherently biased towards some of the decisions, right? One application I can see in that. And a lot of the applications from enterprises from a marketing point of it or from an enterprise process improvement point of it, wherever there is a requirement in terms of generative, not just only text, whether it's text or image or any of these, I see wonderful applications of that. And for the students, the last point on that, don't just go by the hype, right? Just see where the Gen AI is available. Now, initially what we used to see, everywhere they add the tag AI. Now they went to the next level, everywhere they are adding the Gen AI, right? So we need to be realistic, and unless we are solving a realistic research problem or a business problem, the technology is not really useful. Right? The technology is the second point. First, we need to solve interesting problems, whether it is a basic AI which can solve it or Gen AI, depending on the use case.
I'll throw this out to you guys. Who wants to ask a question?
My name is about the Kutrim, which is coming up shortly by Pavesh Agrawal.
Yes.
So, is it going to be a new generation? Because they are claiming that it is going to be bigger than OpenAI, and they are into the multiple languages. In Indian language, it can read Telugu or Tamil or Oriya. So, is it going to be solving what I think Sir was talking about in the morning? Is it something like a beginning for this?
Definitely. So there's a lot of Indianness from the GPT perspective. People talking about Bharat GPT is another company of my friend. Then you are talking about Kutrim as well. There are a lot of unicorns also coming up on that. And that too, why we are seeing that as, I'm also positive about that. The reason is, these technologies need to be contextualized and personalized. That's where the success will come. Somebody trained on the Western data, some decision which is coming, which is not fitting into let's say Indian culture or the decisions or the replies which we are getting, is not acceptable, then it can't fly. Right? So definitely there is some localization in a technical terms, or from a society perspective, culture point of it, all that. It needs to learn the perspectives from how we are trying to use and needs to reflect that. I am also hoping it will definitely be next killer application from an Indian point of it. And that to reach to the masses, definitely different languages and different, it needs to reach to the, maybe the common man, then only it will happen, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll lead off the next question, which is about data and data preparation, right? Anything related to AI, machine learning, deep learning, you need the right data sets. How do you get unstructured data into a structured format and ensure that there is no bias? Okay, bias will kill it. I'll give you an example. In San Francisco, all the traffic lights have cameras, and most of the tickets that were handed out were to the people of color. Why was that happening? So is there a bias in the data that happened? Right? So getting data in the right structure, that's number one. Number two is the right bias. How do you ensure that, Sunil, since you have been practicing this for so long?
Interesting question. So it's more like garbage in and garbage out. We are expecting the model to learn what we provided the data. If we have not provided the right data, then definitely we will not be able to expect a generalized model. right? There are two arguments there, or two schools of thought. One, as you have given example, or maybe another example to add to that. So LinkedIn recommending for a CXO post mostly male versus female. They take out the model, but they say we are not creating any new data there. That's what the data says, maybe last 10 years, right? So, but still they are responsible for just recommending male candidate versus this, or maybe the color or discrimination you are talking about, right? Maybe there are so many tickets on that particular example, but the person who built it is responsible for that. Then how do we overcome, or how do you add more samples? From a technical perspective, we call it as synthetic data generation, or maybe data distributions, right? The one which we are talking about, maybe the realistic situation as the school of thought, first school of thought is, this is what the actual realistic thing. But it may not cover all the ground. Then who is responsible to build a generalized model, right? So two solutions for that. One, think what is the distribution in terms of which is missing points, and we can add it maybe from Gen AI, maybe from statistical models is one school of thought. Second thing is, let the model, whatever you have with the data, be in the practice. And we call it as ML ops, ML operations, right? It's not like one statistical model which is going to work forever. It needs to be retrained on the changes in the patterns, right? So there should be a feedback loop every time to make it successful, whether it's an AI model or a Gen AI model. So that somebody human in loop we can't avoid, right? Whatever the Gen AI or maybe the things which we are recommending from a data perspective may be right in one country, wrong in another country, right? So who will tell that feedbacks? Unless we have that feedback loop and make it as a continuous loop to learn it, we can't completely avoid the bias. To conclude your point, some of them are mathematical and some kind of inputting to make sure the distribution is right. And second thing is a continuous learning point of it to avoid this.
I think there is a basic, another basic question. There is a lot of unstructured data, and as the Commissioner of Police was also saying,
yes.
And that is the biggest opportunity out there for the students and the startups here as well, right? How do you get unstructured data into a structured format so the language models or the algorithm starts performing?
Good question. I missed that, sorry. So, if I use the terms like unsupervised, supervised reinforcement learning, at least half of the crowd will understand, right? I'm not going into the details, at least you heard those terms. If you look back in the last 10 years, where the industry is talking about solving those problems, most of them are supervised. That means the data which we convert it into a structured format, okay, or let it be unstructured like image or text, but we have a label for that. Right? Somebody need to annotate and label for it. In 90% of the problems what we are solving or seeing the success is that part. If we are able to apply directly the unstructured learning, that means I am sitting on pile of data, what our chief guest was talking about, let's say the CCTV footage. Who is going to label that, right? Who is what, or what is the objective and all, right? It is not very easy. But we have a lot of progress in that. But in the recent past, we are talking about understanding from a semi-supervised or a lot of development from unsupervised itself. Right? So we don't really require to convert all the data points, let's say thousands of these data points in terms of images or the text into supervised. We need to think from a new innovative methods where some sampling you can take it and then do sample and then do a semi-supervised, that means relearn point of it, so that we'll come out of the traditional approaches which is cost effective. At the same time, we can't completely avoid the human loop, but you don't require to spend to label thousands of or lakhs of these samples only from a supervised approach. That is one. Second thing is these kind of new approaches can help us in terms of taking the sampling, right? Some of them are very traditional methods, right? Suppose if I have unstructured data of images or text, I need to do the initial data exploration first so that what are the real things which I need to label it. I don't require to do an entire set data set as a label, so that the relevant data will come out of it, and after that apply these new techniques. And a lot of research, interesting problems are happening in the reinforcement learning, unsupervised and semi-supervised, because supervised is more or less a mature thing at this stage. Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning to you. I am Shrikant. I am a veteran. My question is very fundamental after listening to you. Like you very aptly said, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. But what if it is intentional garbage? What if it is deceived data? it is being created for deception. And your machine learning model is going to learn on it and then push out something which is even more deceiving. And finally, if you look at the customer as the end user, what is the solution to this?
Yeah.
If it's a real, it's going to be a real problem very soon.
Definitely.
So how do you look at this?
So we are looking that's where when we are talking about the terms like trusted AI, so nowadays taken it granted. All the things you will see a lot of adjectives, be it Gen AI is one, but on top of it, you will see some of them I might have used like Edge AI, ethical AI, trusted AI, responsible AI, a lot of these adjectives, right? So, but they need to come into reality down the line where we all need to work on. Some of them, let's say if it is an enterprise kind of setup, right? So where we are completely responsible for what we are feeding the data to the model, right? I will talk about that first and after the general OpenAI kind of thing. So there, we are completely responsible, and then we are talking about explainability, transparency, that's what we are talking with Vivek as well. It's no more a black box model. You need to explain when you are taking a decision why. Okay, whether we are talking from explainability or from a model validation perspective. We used to have a lot of good testing practices, right? In AI, it is not very much in the last decade, but now we are talking about a lot of things from a model validation, okay? So we are trying to ensure whatever we are building from a model perspective, we are responsible for it, right? Some of those best practices can help. I'm not saying 100%, but it will. Second angle is some of the things, especially from an OpenAI or these kind of things, where the model was put into the public and we are giving a lot of inputs, right? So that can be bad, ugly as well, not always from a positive side. Then some guardrails should be there when they are trying to retrain to filter out. A lot of research is also going on, whether abusive words, let's remove it. Or if you ask some political or maybe the things which are supposed to, not supposed to ask, they are still asking, it won't reply, right? But it needs to go in a continuous training perspective, and regulations also should guard rail. And if it is going beyond a track without from a performance perspective or from a acceptance perspective, it needs to be stopped. Those kind of guardrails also can help.
I'll lead off on the question before you go. If it is related, you can ask.
Yes, it's a related only.
Okay.
Just my name is Kiran Kumar and I'm working as a solution architect in one of the top companies. So my question is that how the industry is going to evaluate the models. When I say that take an example that ChatGPT is there, similar where there is a competition that Google Gemini is there. If the both are coming with the problem, what industry is having a problem, and both model can go and solve the solution, then industry is going to evaluate which model is correct and which, because both output may be similar, but all the industry is going to take a decision that okay, this model has to be taken. And why this I asked the question. Let's say that there is two startups, both have there is one problem, both startups have addressed the solution. Okay. But how will you evaluate the solution from industry point of view?
Good point. So when we talk about the evaluation, initially that I might have told in one of the challenges towards the end, trade-offs, right? It's not just only if it is only accuracy kind of a thing, it is easy for you. A metric number will come based on some of your data set and okay, A versus B, which is performing. But now the evaluation from a 360-degree point of view, not just only accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, these are very common mathematical ones, right? But on top of it, what is happening now, how trustworthy is that model is, how it is performing on the corner cases, how much of bias kind of things people are trying to test it, how stable that model, how robust is that, and how ethical that particular thing based on the application it is there. There are multiple parameters. And I can refer it to you some of the Stanford University Transparency Index kind of a thing. They are trying to give multiple parameters and a quantitative metric for that. So based on that, we are trying to evaluate who is good and who is comparatively not that great. Right? So that kind of solutions are not completely evolved, but evolving at this stage, I'll tell you, from a Gen AI perspective. Because we are talking about two big things, and then especially things are evolving. But from an enterprise perspective, if you ask me, on top of these indexes, what value it is bringing from not a general problem solving, but for that particular industry problem. Based on that, people will hook into one of them. Thank you.
I guess
one last question, please. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
We have lost track of time, so.
Oh, we have lost. You can have the discussion afterwards.
We
Okay.
will for some more time, so we can definitely catch up after the session.
So
yeah, please.
The last as well is about explainability. When a model or an algorithm is making a decision, or a deep learning network is making a decision, how do you explain it? very critical from a life sciences perspective because there is a life at the end of it. Financial transaction, you might lose $100 or $200 or 100 rupees or whatever it is. It's not a life. Whereas in life sciences, healthcare, if a algorithm does a wrong diagnosis on an image, or if I'm predicting an adverse event, it does the wrong prediction, I have to be answerable to the person and then also answerable to the regulatory authorities. Right? How do I ensure that the explainability is taken care?
Good question. So when I started working maybe 7 years ago, it's just a pure research problem, right? But now when I see in the last 7-8 years, a lot of frameworks are readily available. As an entrepreneur or maybe as a student or a researcher, you need to be aware that there is a component like explainability is the need of the hour for two reasons. One, while building the model itself, if you have access to what it is really learning, you can optimize it further. So there are a lot of, let's say whether it's IBM AX360 or this TensorFlow or PyTorch, they have the modules which are readily available like Line, SHAP. I don't want to bombard a lot of these terms, but the point is, they are readily available just like your API calls. But you need to be aware that we need where to use it. One, during the development. Second, during the regulatory point of it, when you are talking about, it's no more a black box, the deep learning model kind of thing. It is able to explain each and every layer or a parameter what it is learning, right? Whether it is for a text data or maybe the image data. If you ask me from a Gen AI perspective, I will say it is still in the research phase. Because people are talking about 2 months ago when we are attending a global conference, people talked about, is it too early to talk explainability for a Gen AI? Whereas, it took 10 years for a deep learning to reach to the stage and we are talking about explainability now. But both are not the same because the disruptive effects of Gen AI, if something goes wrong, is too much, right? To increase the trust among the users or the society point of it, people agreed, even though there are differences of opinion, yes, it is the need of the hour. I can't use the same explainability algorithms which we have already established. That's where a lot of research is going on. But ultimately, there are a lot of methods, whether it is a text or image or even for that matter video, to explain it in terms of whether only final output to evaluate or intermediate steps as well. Depending. Regulator may not be interested to understand what each layer is learning. For them, what the last layer, okay, if I'm saying an image, a COVID positive from a chest X-ray, I need to point out not just only the numbers, I am 80% confident that it is there, but highlight that particular image, so that I get the confidence from the doctors and even to the regulators. And we are finally responsible, whoever is building it, right, to make it, if there is some course correction needs to happen, let's retrain that. Right? That's where it is applicable, both from a performance point of it and from a regulatory perspective as well.
I'll leave it at that. Hello. So this explainability is a huge research area. There are a lot of educational institutions here. If the professors are here, you should take it up as a research topic because it only started off in 2019 and there is a ton of research funding available for it, and a lot of students also should pick it up because explainability is going to be a huge business area for everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thanks for the interactive session.
Gentlemen, to a close, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Mr. Sunil Kumar and Mr. Vivek Kalagara, for their enlightening discussion and invaluable insights. Your expertise and perspectives on AI in business have truly enriched our understanding of this transformative topic, and we are incredible and grateful for your contribution. I would now like to extend an invitation to Mr. R.L. Narayana, Center Head, WNS, to please present the token of appreciation to Mr. Sunil Kumar. Welcome, Mr. Narayana.